America is on the brink. Our economy is in shambles. The American dream is slipping away. We are a nation divided, drowning in debt, and facing threats from within and outside our borders. The cost of living is skyrocketing while wages remain stagnant. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening. One of the most visible signs of our nation's decline is the price of gasoline. Every time we fill up our tanks, we're reminded of the economic pain inflicted upon us. The cost of gas affects everything. It impacts the price of food, transportation, and goods and services. Their policies are destroying our energy independence and driving up prices for hardworking Americans. But the problem goes far beyond gas prices. Our economy is a house of cards, built on a foundation of debt and propped up by artificial stimulus. Inflation is soaring. The dollar is weakening. The stock market is teetering on the edge of a cliff. China is flexing its muscles on the world stage. Remember when you could walk into a grocery store and fill your cart without emptying your wallet? Those days are long gone. Thanks to the disastrous policies of the Biden administration, grocery shopping has become a luxury many Americans can no longer afford. The price of meat has skyrocketed. Even basic staples like bread and milk are becoming increasingly out of reach. Families are forced to make heartbreaking choices, sacrificing nutrition and quality just to put anything on the table. This is about real families, real children going to bed hungry. And what is the Biden administration's answer? They offer empty platitudes and tired excuses. They are out of touch, out of ideas, and out of time. Remember those Biden bucks they threw at us? Those measly stimulus checks were supposed to save the economy. What a joke. All they did was fuel the inflation fire, making everything even more expensive. Now, we're paying the price. The American dream is turning into a nightmare of endless bills and mounting debt. Food banks are overwhelmed. Charities are stretched thin. Millions of Americans are relying on handouts just to survive. Is this the future we want? A nation of scavengers, forced to beg for scraps while the elite feast? It's a disgrace. It's un-American. And it's a direct result of the failed policies of the Biden administration. They promised us unity, but they delivered division. They promised us prosperity, but they delivered poverty. They promised us a brighter future, but they plunged us into darkness. Look around you. Look at the streets of our once great cities. They're teeming with lost souls, with forgotten Americans cast aside by a system that's failed them. The homeless crisis is a festering wound on the American conscience, a stark reminder of our nation's broken promises. Under bridges and parks, on the doorsteps of businesses, makeshift tents and cardboard shelters have become a chillingly common sight. These aren't just statistics, they are human beings. The American dream, once a beacon of hope, now feels like a cruel illusion for those living a nightmare on our streets.
What happens when hope dies? What happens when the weight of poverty, addiction, and mental illness becomes too heavy to bear? We see the answer every day on the streets of our cities.
The causes of homelessness are complex, but the consequences are clear. It's a vicious cycle of poverty, addiction, and mental illness, made worse by a lack of affordable housing, inadequate mental health services, and a system that often seems designed to trap people in a spiral of despair. We cannot simply ignore this crisis or pretend it doesn't exist. We must find the compassion, the resources, and the will to break this cycle of despair. Where is the hope for those living on the streets? Where is the help they so desperately need? The answer should be clear. It lies with us. It lies with each and every one of us who still believes in the promise of America, who still believes in the power of compassion and the importance of community. The government has failed. The politicians offer empty promises and band-aid solutions. They are more interested in scoring political points than in solving real problems. We must raise our voices. We must demand better for the most vulnerable among us. The lights flicker. Your phone goes dead. The ATM eats your card. This is not a scene from a dystopian movie. This is the terrifying reality of our nation under constant digital siege.
Our critical infrastructure, the very backbone of our society, is under attack from relentless cyber threats. They are targeting our power grids, our financial institutions, our communication networks, the very systems we rely on for our daily lives.
Section 2. The power grid, vulnerable and exposed.
Imagine a nation shrouded in darkness, hospitals plunged into chaos, communication networks down, businesses shuttered. This is not hyperbole. This is the stark reality we face if our power grid, the lifeblood of our nation, falls victim to a catastrophic cyber attack. The vulnerability is real.
Section 3. A nation under siege.
This is not just about flickering lights or lost internet connections. This is about the erosion of our national security, the undermining of our way of life. The cyber siege we face is not a distant threat. It's happening now, silently and insidiously, right under our noses.
And it's not just foreign adversaries we need to worry about. Domestic terrorists, criminal organizations, even lone wolf actors are increasingly turning to cyber weapons to achieve their goals. The internet, once a tool for connection and progress, has become a weapon of mass disruption.
Section 1. The invasion we ignore.
They pour across our border, a relentless tide of humanity, overwhelming our defenses, ignoring our laws, and testing our resolve. This is not immigration, this is an invasion. A silent invasion, ignored by the mainstream media, downplayed by the Biden administration, but felt acutely by everyday Americans struggling to make ends meet.
We are told these are desperate people seeking a better life. We are told to have compassion, to open our hearts and our borders. But what about compassion for our own citizens?
Section 2, A Nation Divided, The Real Cost of Open Borders.
The American dream. The idea that anyone, regardless of their background, can achieve success through hard work and determination. A noble idea, now fading like a distant memory as our nation grapples with the real-world consequences of uncontrolled immigration.
Our schools and hospitals are overwhelmed. Our social safety net is stretched to the breaking point. Our taxes are being used to support those who have no right to be here. Section 3, The Crumbling Facade, The Death of the American Dream. Remember when a single income could support a family? When homeownership was attainable for the average worker? When a college education was a ticket to a brighter future? Those days are gone. The cost of living is skyrocketing, fueled by inflation and reckless government spending. Wages are stagnant, leaving hardworking Americans struggling to keep up with the rising cost of basic necessities. The middle class is shrinking, squeezed from both sides by the wealthy elite and the ever-growing ranks of the poor. Our children are inheriting a nation on the brink, burdened by debt, crippled by division, and facing challenges more daunting than any generation before. Section 1, The Market Creators.
The numbers on the screen tell a story of fear and uncertainty. Red dominates. Downward arrows pierce through any glimmer of hope. The stock market, once a symbol of American prosperity, now reflects the terrifying reality of our economic freefall.
Remember the crash of 2008? The pain, the panic, the sense that the world was coming apart at the seams? Experts warn that what we are facing now could be far worse.
The warning signs are everywhere. Inflation is raging, interest rates are soaring, the housing market teeters on the edge of collapse.
The Biden administration, clueless and incompetent, offers nothing but empty reassurances and tired excuses. They blame the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, even the sunspots, for their self-inflicted wounds on our economy. They are fiddling while Rome burns, more concerned with their radical agenda than with the economic well-being of the American people.
This is not just about numbers on a screen. This is about retirement savings vanishing, dreams turning to dust, and the very foundation of our financial system crumbling before our eyes. This is about the systematic dismantling of the American dream, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. Section 2, 2026, end of the road.
Whispers circulate through the internet, hushed conversations in dark corners. A date, once innocuous, now carries a chilling weight, 2026. Some economists, some analysts, Some with their fingers on the pulse of the global financial system are sounding the alarm.
They see the writing on the wall. They predict a collapse, a crash unlike any we have ever seen. They point to unsustainable debt levels, reckless government spending, and a global economy on the brink.
They see the warning signs in the weakening dollar, the rising cost of commodities, and the growing unrest among nations. They believe that 2026 is not just a year on the calendar, but a potential point of no return.
The mainstream media, complicit in their silence, dismisses these warnings as fringe theories, as fear-mongering, as conspiracy theories.
But what if they are wrong? What if these experts are right? What if 2026 marks the beginning of the end for the American empire?
The Biden administration, asleep at the wheel, continues to steer us toward this economic abyss. They refuse to acknowledge the severity of the situation, choosing instead to double down on their failed policies, their reckless spending, and their socialist agenda.
They are leading us, blindfolded, towards the cliff edge, and they don't seem to care. The whispers are turning to shouts. The fear is palpable. The veneer of normalcy is cracking, revealing the raw panic simmering just below the surface. People are starting to wake up, to realize the precariousness of their situation, to see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Lines snake around gas stations, the fear of shortages fueling a frenzy for fuel. Grocery store shelves are stripped bare, the essentials vanishing as people stockpile for an uncertain future. Banks brace for the worst, the memory of runs on banks during the Great Depression still fresh in the minds of many. The social fabric, already strained by years of political division, economic hardship, and the pandemic, begins to unravel. Trust evaporates. Neighbor turns on neighbor. The very foundations of society, built on a fragile foundation of order and stability, begin to crumble. This is the legacy of the Biden administration. This is the result of their incompetence, their arrogance, their utter disregard for the well-being of the American people. They have sown the seeds of chaos, and now we are left to reap the whirlwind. The evidence is undeniable. The facts speak for themselves. Under the Biden administration, America has been brought to its knees. Our economy is in shambles. Our streets are overflowing with the homeless and the desperate. Our enemies circle like vultures, sensing weakness, preparing to pounce. Remember the promises Biden made? Unity, prosperity, a return to normalcy? Lies. Empty words from a hollow shell of a leader. He promised to heal our nation, but he has only deepened the divides. He promised to build back better, but he has only succeeded in tearing us down. This is not the fault of Republicans. This is not the fault of some grand conspiracy. This is the direct result of the failed policies, the incompetence, the utter lack of leadership of Joe Biden and his administration. They have betrayed the American people, and we are paying the price for their failures. They have abandoned the American dream, replacing it with a nightmare of inflation, crime, and social unrest. They have turned their backs on the working class, on the forgotten men and women who built this nation, who fought for our freedoms, who deserve better than the hand they have been dealt. But there is hope. We have seen what a strong leader can do. We have seen what happens when America embraces its potential, when it stands tall on the world stage, when it puts its own citizens first. We saw it under President Donald Trump. Remember the booming economy? The record low unemployment, the respect from our allies and the fear from our enemies? That was America First in action. That was a taste of what we can achieve when we have a leader who puts America first, who understands the challenges we face, who has the courage to stand up for our values, and who will fight for our interests at home and abroad.
The Biden administration wants you to forget the successes of the Trump era. They want you to believe that their failures are somehow inevitable, that there is no alternative to their disastrous agenda. But we know better. We remember what it was like to have a leader who fought for us, who understood our values, who made America great again. The Trump presidency was a beacon of hope in a world of darkness. It was a glimpse of what America can be, of what we can achieve when we have a leader who believes in our nation, who believes in our people, who believes in our future.
The road ahead will be difficult. The storm clouds are gathering. The Biden administration has set us on a dangerous course. and the consequences will be severe. But we are not powerless. We are Americans. We are a nation forged in adversity, tempered by challenge, and strengthened by our resolve. We must prepare. We must be ready for the challenges ahead. We must be prepared to stand up for our values, to fight for our freedoms, to protect our families and our communities from the threats we face. Prepare your homes, stock your pantries, educate yourselves on the dangers we face, connect with like-minded individuals, join the movement. We are stronger together. The time for complacency is over. The time for action is now. The future of our nation, the future of our children, depends on what we do today. Will we stand idly by as our nation crumbles, or will we rise to the challenge, embrace our heritage, and fight for the soul of America? The choice is ours. The time is now. Prepare for the storm. God bless America.